Hey, Guobbie here! Tribbie is on her way to Honkai Star Rail with a pretty interesting kit that combines universalness and sub DPS power in one. Lots of Harmony jokes will be coming, so stay prepared. Today I'll be going through her kit very quickly, it's kinda simple, and then going through her best build options, stat goals, and more like teammates. I'll also be talking a bit about when you'd use her over another Harmony unit. So like and sub if this helps, share to any Tribbie pillars, and let's begin. Tribbie is our second Quantum Harmony unit, but is drastically different to Sparkle. Among base stats, there's nothing abnormal barring her enormous base defense, but she's a HP scaler, so... Anyway, for trace priority, you want to focus on her skill and ultimate first above everything, then followed by talent if you want a bit more damage out of her. Basics can be ignored. Now onto abilities. Basic attacks are usually irrelevant, but it's interesting to note that Tribbie's basic attack is both a blast attack as well as HP scaling. Now Tribbie's skill is a simple 3-turn aura buff, just like May or Robin. Tribbie's will give the whole team 24% all-type res pen. Enemies weak to your element have 0% res to your element. So in a vacuum with this buff, that is a 1.24 times damage boost. The way res pen works though is the more resistances the enemy has, the stronger it is. If they have 20% res to your element, 24% res pen instead becomes a 1.3 times damage boost and can get even stronger. But that doesn't mean you should face off-type enemies just to make this buff stronger, as your damage will still be weaker than it could be if you just fought enemies weak to you. It's more of a bonus feature. Anyways, res pen is universally powerful. It works for every damage type in the game. And since this is an AoE aura buff and easily refreshable, this skill will work on all allies versus all enemies at all times. Now for Tribbie's ultimate, she will do damage to all enemies and then deploy a zone. This zone will last for 2 turns, decreasing at the start of her turn. Avoid ulting right before her turn or you'll waste a whole lot of uptime. When this zone is active, enemies will receive 30% more damage. This is a vulnerability modifier, not a damage percent boost. So we have yet another rare and universal multiplier. And yet again, this is universally powerful as vulnerability works on all damage types in the game. And as it applies to enemies during the zone's duration, this will also work for all allies versus all enemies. What also happens during the zone is when allies attack, every target hit will make Tribbie hit the highest HP enemy for 12% of her max HP. So one target is hit, 12% HP to the highest HP enemy. 5 targets though, you get a nice 60% HP multiplier attack from Tribbie. This essentially helps your AoE damage dealers get a bit of single target power through the support. Tribbie's talent will give her even more damage capabilities. After other allies, so not including herself, use their ultimate, she will perform a follow-up attack and hit all enemies. However, this unfortunately has a limit of 1 per unit, which will reset after Tribbie herself ults. So you'll rotate your team ults, Tribbie ult, team ults. Tribbie can get her ult up quite fast, so the limit isn't too bad in a lot of cases, but it can hurt some fun combos. Also remember to not waste Tribbie ult uptime just for these follow-ups. Her vulnerability damage boost is very potent. Finally, her technique applies her skill's Numinosity buff for 3 turns when entering battle. This lets her basic attack a bunch at the start of the battle to improve team SP economy. Tribbie's passives are quite amazing though and make her truly shine. Her first will give her a stacking damage buff after launching her follow-up. This will be a whopping 72% damage and can stack to 3 times for a total insane 216%. So while she may be a Harmony and the HP multiplier is not too high, this damage percent will help a ton. Her second passive increases her max HP during her ult zone based off of the sum of her allies' HP, basically more stat scaling for damage. That does not mean she only pairs with high HP units though. Don't make that mistake, it's just a bonus. And finally, to tie it all together, her energy passive. 30 energy at the start of the battle, which scales with energy regeneration rate, and 1.5 energy every target hit when other allies attack. This doesn't work for her own attacks, but this energy passive is deceptively OP. Just like Harmony MC's energy passive when they first came out, in the right conditions, this can supercharge Tribbie's ultimates. This will ensure her ult zone has permanent uptime in some fights, something someone like May can struggle with. And say we have a light cone that loves ult spamming, well, we get some silly power. More on energy later though. Tribbie finally gets crit damage, crit rate, and HP in her bonuses, 3 perfect damage scaling bonuses for our Harmony unit. I know some DPS are out there seething right now. Before builds and more, let's review Eidolons. Just like Robin, Tribbie has a very powerful E1. When her ult zone is up and after allies attack enemies, she will deal true damage equal to 24% of the total damage of the attack to targets that have been dealt additional damage by the zone. So you'd think it's a 1.24 times damage boost, right? Except, the additional damage in the ult goes specifically only to the enemy with the highest HP. So instead what this does is total all your damage in one attack to all enemies, multiply that by 0.24, and then send that into the highest HP enemy. For example, instead of doing 100k damage to all enemies, you now do 100k to all enemies, and an extra 120k to the highest HP enemy on the field. So instead of overkilling weak enemies, your damage is combined to smack the boss or elite. This is insane for making blast or AoE units perform even greater into single target, and it still helps single target DPS. It's one of the best Eidolons in the game right now, but not necessary for Tribbie to perform. Now for the rest, E2 is a boost to Tribbie's damage. The additional damage she does becomes stronger, and she also does an extra instance of damage no matter the hit count of your allies. So you hit 5 enemies, well, instead of doing 60% of her HP, it's now 72%. E4 is just some weak def ignore for the whole team. Finally, E6 just promotes Tribbie's destruction of the world with a never before seen follow-up attack damage boost, on top of her own ultimate, now being able to proc her own follow-up attacks. Here are my calculated Eidolon gains for Tribbie in a team for the Herter. This is a 3-target simulation and does not count enemies dying, so a 3-target fight for the whole process. This means the E1 will be weaker in actual practice unless those targets are permanent or keep coming back. And if we went up to 5 targets, the E1 would get even stronger. Finally, just remember, she is great at E0 and your teams will clear without Eidolons. So for builds, let's first look at light cones and start off with her signature. First off, a crit damage buff for her damage dealing self. Then after she launches a follow-up, she gets an additional 12 energy, so 17 energy per follow-up for Tribbie now. She also gains the presage buff for 2 turns, and while she has this, allies including herself gain 48 crit damage. Finally, this light cone gives her energy at the start of the battle as well as presage. This energy specifically allows her to ult immediately at the start of the battle. Now this cone sounds crazy, but I find her fine without it and actually prefer another cone in certain situations. The crit damage for the team is really nice, but let's look at the energy. She needs a 2-turn ult and she can get it without this cone, but it will help some lower target scenarios guarantee the 2-turn ult. And going to 1-turn ult is cool, but that doesn't do too much for us with this cone. It's more Tribbie ults, so a bit more damage, but the resetting of her follow-up is kinda useless if you aren't ulting every turn alongside her. And there aren't many units that can do this. And only having one of these ult spamming units in the team means you'll get like 1 extra follow-up than usual, which isn't really much. The energy at the start of the battle is really nice for immediately buffing your team, as a lot of Tribbies will build to be super slow. But if your team's first rotation is weak anyway, then you won't need it up instantly, and if you really need to ult first, just go first with Von Whack, or you can just hit a lot of enemies with a sub DPS or sustain. E1 is by far better, but S1 is still great if you don't have the next cone. If you picked up a Dance, Tribbie can use this cone very well. Just like Harmony MC can in Brig spamming situations, Tribbie in AoE fights will be spamming out ultimates at least once every 2 turns, sometimes even every turn. This makes her a mini Robin on top of all of her other buffs. And in scenarios where you can spam out ultimates and use a slow build on the Herter, I actually prefer this cone sometimes. What is going to help more if you can't one-shot the first wave? Some crit damage and maybe an extra few Tribbie hits, or enough action advance to let your whole team act again. If you have nothing else though, Memories of the Past and Meshing Cogs will be your best bets. Ult uptime is key here, so helping that out might as well be your priority if you don't have Dance or her signature. The problem with Cogs here though is since she is outputting some damage, that weaker base HP will hurt more than usual. Now for Relics, she has a couple options. If you have a team that can charge Tribbie's energy up for her or her S1, then you can go for the new Poet set. This will maximize her damage and keep her super slow, and her being slow means her aura buffs take even longer to wear down. This setup is ideal with her S1, as that will ensure an ultimate at 0 AV, so you'll have her res pen and vulnerability up right from the start even at 90 speed. If you don't have her S1 and are instead going for Memories or Dance as your light cone, then you'll probably want her faster if you don't have a team that can get her an early ult. though she can still go base speed with other cones if your team is spamming enough attacks. But if not, I recommend going for 120 with Von Whack. Kind of like the Von Whack slow Ron May setup, this will ensure she gets ahead to basic into ultimate and then drops to a lower speed. You'll have your buffs up for the first team rotation, and then their duration will last a while with Tribbie at 120 speed. The relics you choose here aren't important, just go for good 2-piece combos that get you to ideal stat goals. So Longevous works, Hackerspace works if HP boots, Quantum Set works for damage. And if you want to go crazy, you can go even faster with the Eagle Set and Dance, but here you'd want to make sure your ult uptime doesn't suffer. This setup is just like any other Harmony doing the same thing, and it's very reminiscent of Harmony MC, just with the fact that Tribbie is one of the fastest ult spammers in the right fights. So she becomes kind of like a pseudo Robin as said earlier. Her ulting more often at a higher speed also means she can keep up with units like one-turn ult Serval and Argenti. Finally, Planars will be Lushaka or Von Whack if you're going for that 120 setup. We want energy. If you're fine on energy or running her S1 for example, you can still go Lushaka to boost your main DPS, or you can use Fleet instead for a boost in Tribbie damage as well as boosting multiple attack scaling DPS. Finally, you can also farm the new Bone Collection Planar set, which will boost specifically her damage the most. Main stats will be Crit Chest, HP or Speed Boots, HP Orb, and mostly Energy Rope, with some cases allowing for a HP Rope. Most choices are self-explanatory, with HP Orb being specifically because she's getting 200 plus damage percent in her abilities already. For stat goals, aim for 4000 HP at least, but this can go to nearly 6k with a HP Orb and Rope. Remember, her zone will also give her a bunch of HP, so we don't need to stack it too much. She's not a sustain, she wants to do damage, so we'll want to focus more on crit than spamming more HP. Let's aim for 90 crit rate in combat, so including the poet buff if using that, and 180 crit damage pre-combat. Remember, she has crit rate and crit damage traces, and doesn't necessarily need speed, so we have way more subsets to work with. If you're going for a faster build, you'll have a lower crit ratio. Speed goals are the same as before, base, 120 with Von Whack, or higher if you know what you're doing. Now energy is dependent on how frequent your team can hit enemies as well as how many enemies there are, but here are some rotations. She will need 2 follow-ups from allies using ultimates and 24 enemies hit within 2 Tribbie turns in order to ult again and keep that maximum ult uptime. If you add in a 5% energy planar, you remove the need for some enemies hit. And if adding in her S1 you get an abundance of energy from her follow-up attacks, and thus you can opt for HP Rope and you still won't need that many enemies hit for that 2-turn ult. If you want to go for a 1-turn ultimate, you will need 2 ally ultimates, which is hard to do, and so many enemies hit. This is possible in something like PF with super fast spamming allies. It also isn't counting kills, and on weaker enemies Tribbie can steal a bunch of kill credits. Quid pro quo sustainers also help, and energy hit RNG is not factored in either. With her S1 it becomes much easier to perform, but still not always possible, and ult spamming with her S1 isn't that crazy of a benefit compared to being able to with Dance Dance Dance. So aim for a 2-turn rotation, but just know that 1-turn ones can happen. 3-turn ults can also happen if you are in a low target fight. So when would we use Tribbie? In general, she is great in dual DPS teams, teams with DPS that have high buff saturation, and erudition teams. Dual DPS can both benefit from her AoE buffs, just like they can with Ron May or Robin, or debuffers like Jiao Cho. High self-buff units like Aglaya already get 3000 attack, so Robin giving 2000 is less impactful than Tribbie's res pen and vulnerability. And erudition teams will usually face high AoE content, which makes Tribbie's effectiveness go much higher. Tribbie is just a really nice support to plop in anywhere, just like Ron May back in the day and still kind of today. AoE buffs that are universal and pretty strong. In pure fiction specifically with Dance Dance Dance, Tribbie becomes a very powerful enabler that can let your whole team keep on acting again and again. My problem with Tribbie is if AoE content stops being shielded outside of pure fiction, then her effectiveness will slowly fall. Her damage and energy gains and E1 potential all drop substantially versus single target fights. Sometimes she feels a bit underwhelming, or maybe that's what we just call balanced. But with the Herta being our newest big DPS and an Anaxagoras on the way, I don't think that AoE will disappear for a while. And so, just like Robin got a lot of units shielded for her, I think Tribbie will have the same treatment to make you want to pull. We know that My Day's HP scaling based off of the livestream, and the new HP planers in 3.1 are heavily hinting at caster race being the same. As I've said many times in the past, the way that Robin can fall in power is if we stray away from attack scaling. This is also why I rate Sunday highly, as his buffs are all about advance, damage and crit, rather than focusing on specifically attack. A big part of Robin's buffs is that insane amount of attack. Whilst you still get benefits like crit damage and action advance and concerto procs, it's not that much anymore without the attack on top. And so a unit like Tribbie giving universal and rare damage multipliers to the whole team is more preferable. And to those concerto procs, well, Tribbie usually does more damage anyway. So for attack scalers, I feel you can use either Robin or Tribbie, but Tribbie specifically will be nicer if we get more the Herta type units that need enemy hit counts to succeed. Robin would be preferred if the units need more actions or are based on specifically attack counts like Fei Xiao. Regardless of either of these two units, if the main DPS is a hypercarry and not in a dual DPS comp, then Sunday is most likely the first priority anyway. So basically, I think Tribbie is great but not game breaking, and that's a good thing. But I also suspect they will make her even better by making sure what she provides is more important than other buffers. Though just like Robin was an amazing pull just to be able to put Rame in another team back in 2.2, Tribbie is a great pull just to be able to put Robin in another team. Anyways, for some teams, the Herta can use Tribbie excellently. First off, she will always be using dual DPS comps, which means Robin or Tribbie is a must for top damage. Then she self-buffs in so many different ways, so she really likes Tribbie's buffs. Also, they both synergize in the same way with AoE attack spammers charging up their ultimates. But apart from buffs and the AoE aspect, the fact that Tribbie is always hitting all enemies in ult, 3 enemies in her basic, and then all enemies after every ally ultimate means she is the best energy battery sport in the game for the Herta. Instead of 15 energy from a Serval ult, you can now get 30. So then you use her alongside your favorite sub DPS, but ultimate spammers like Serval and Argenti get a boost as they can further enable Tribbie's follow-up spam. Lingsha becomes even better due to her AoE spamming, but Huohuo and Quid Pro Quo Gallagher also work in that 4th slot. Aglaya is also great with Tribbie as a second buffer, but I had energy struggles without Robin or Bronya giving more action advance. At E1 Aglaya or fights where your Aglaya ult uptime is perfecto, I'd say Tribbie can be top tier. She synergizes with allies taking tons of actions as they can spam as many attacks as they want and still retain all those big Tribbie buffs. Aglaya self-buffing a ton attack-wise also devalues Robin. I also tested her with Dot, and it's like having another Rame or Robin in that team, but weaker. She doesn't provide anything new for them as Rame provides extra dot procs and Robin provides action advance. Tribbie's damage amp buffs are amazing, but otherwise she doesn't synergize in any extra way with Dot. I hope this video helped any Tribbie pods, and if it did, be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what you think of her. Thanks to my amazing YouTube members, thanks for watching, and have a Guoba day.